On May 7, 2025, amidst the smoke on the Indo-Pakistani border, a J-10C fighter plane of the Pakistani Air Force fired a PL-15E air-to-air missile that pierced the sky 180 kilometers away from the Indian Air Force's Rafale fighter planes. On May 7, 2025, in the smoke along the Indo-Pakistani border, a PL-15E air-to-air missile launched by a Pakistani Air Force J-10C fighter jet cut through the sky and accurately penetrated an Indian Air Force Rafale 180 kilometers away, instantly transforming three French-built airborne elites, worth more than $700 million into fireballs that crashed into a Punjabi farmland. Ironically, the Indian military, while loudly claiming that electronic warfare successfully jammed the missiles, collected the missile debris scattered in the field as if it were a treasure, and handed it over to Japan 3 weeks later under the name of technical cooperation, on the condition that the only condition was that the research results must be shared. This seemingly win-win deal, in fact, India and Japan and the technology anxiety driven by the crack farce, and China's military industry as early as 10 years ago for this moment has laid a dragnet. The excitement of the Japanese experts in the Indian labs was soon doused by the cold reality. They were confronted with the wreckage of the PL-15E, the guide head section of which had been blasted into a honeycomb by aluminum borate explosives, and the core chip had fused into unrecognizable metal lumps, with even the circuit texture gone. Toshiba engineers were even more shocked that the missile casing was printed with the Arashi Group logistics code, which could have been mistaken for a takeout warmer, if not for the military logo. When the team tried to scan the gallium nitride tier components, 100,000 times the precision requirements of the electronic mirror dwarfed Japan's most advanced, 30,000 times the equipment. China's military industries, anti-cracking triple door, has already started. Physical level. The foreign trade version of the range has been deliberately limited to 145 kilometers, only the self-use of the missile. Physical level. The foreign trade version of the range is deliberately limited to 145 kilometers, only 63% of the self-use version of the PL-15. The radar banned by the physical lock. Disassembly is difficult to measure the real parameters. Self-destruction mechanism. Once the missile deviates from the track, aluminum borate explosives will be accurate, blasting guide head, to ensure that the chip data instantly to zero. Software system. The gallium code, programming language encryption barriers, so that in the software system, the encryption barrier constructed by the programming language, gallium code, makes the cracking team lament that it is even harder than deciphering the oracle bone. The most desperate material experts of the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, JAXA, is the silicon carbide fiber coating that covers the body of the bomb. Spectral analysis shows that it contains a precise ratio of 21 rare earth elements. While China controls 90% of the world's production of gallium, 68.5% of the germanium production, which are used in the production of gallium nitride chips of strategic resources, are subject to strict export control. These strategic resources for GaN chip production are under strict export control. Only to get together the supply chain of rare earths will take 10 years, let alone crack the formula process. PL-15E surface is a foreign trade commodity, in fact, is a technology-safe deposit box. Japan's eagerness to be the receiver is deeply rooted in the structural difficulties of its air self-defense force. The F-35 fleet is firmly stuck by the US, and can only mount a single $2 million AIM-120 missiles, and their performance has been deliberately emasculated. The range of the domestic AIM-4B missiles is only 150 kilometers, less than 70% of the PL-15E, and the guiding head is resistant to attack. The range of the domestic AIM-4B missile is only 150 kilometers, less than 70% of the PL-15E, and the anti-jamming capability of the guide head is even more than 2 generations away. And the East China Sea direction of the actual combat oppression is increasing. J-20 with its own version of the PL-15 in the Diaoyu Islands airspace cruise. Japan's F-15J radar screen is often reduced to a snowflake screen. Early warning systems in the complex electromagnetic environment is virtually non-existent. India handed over the wreckage of the move. Japan is the last straw, even if it can only analyze the composition of the propellant residue, may also be able to provide reference for the upgrading of electronic countermeasures system, but they selectively ignored a cruel fact. The real power of China's missiles is not in the projectile itself, but in the combat system behind it. The wreckage is like a broken finger detached from the body, and then the precision has lost its life. While Indian and Japanese experts are racking their brains over the wreckage, China's military workshop is setting off a new round of technological tsunami. The flexible production line of Luoyang Missile Research Institute works around the clock, with mechanical arms embroidering on circuit boards with micron-level precision, and the high-quality inspection system monitoring the error of 1,000th of a hair's breadth 24 hours a day. The production of the foreign trade version of the PL-15E in the morning, and switching to a super long-range production line for the self-use version of the PL-21 in the afternoon, with the production capacity exceeding 100 PCS in a single day. The PL-17 ultra-long-range air-to-air missile has been quietly put into service, with a range of 500 kilometers to cover early warning aircraft and refueling planes, and the Guam base is within its deterrent radius. The built-in bomb bay of the J-20 has completed its adaptive modification, and the newest version of the J-35 has also incorporated it into its arsenal. The latest J-35 has also incorporated it into its arsenal. What's more shocking is the Air Combat System's downward strike. The Airborne Police 3000 early warning aircraft sits in the rear, with a detection radius extending to 2,000 kilometers, and the data chain synchronizes the target information to the Thunderbolt missiles in milliseconds, and the latter only needs to nod and sign to launch a fatal strike. U.S. Pacific Fleet Commander Samuel Paparo's complaint is still ringing in our ears. Chinese missiles force carriers to hide 2,700 kilometers away. The PL-15E is jokingly called the youth version within the PLA, and its own model not only has a range of more than 300 kilometers, but also has the ability to change orbit and intelligent anti-jamming capabilities, and the countdown to death mode, which is activated by the guide head only within 10 kilometers, makes the enemy aircraft alarm means the end. Alarm means the end. This technology game reflects the deeper industrial strength divide. 2023 China's R&D investment of 3.3 trillion yuan, accounting for the proportion of GDP 2.64%, equivalent to the daily input of 9 small goals. India's R&D investment in the same period only accounted for 0.7% of the GDP, and even China's fraction is less than. China has 39 industrial categories, 191 medium categories, 525 small categories of the complete industrial system, theoretically independent production of almost all military weapons systems. The total output of the manufacturing industry as early as 2014 has reached 140% of the United States. On the contrary, India, claiming to build semiconductor power for 3 years, Foxconn suddenly withdrew from the $19.5 billion chip plant project in 2023. The reason is, government subsidies are not in place for a long time. This gap is particularly fatal in the field of military industry, when Chinese engineers in the Nanshan district of Shenzhen, to discuss the quantum well structure of gallium nitride chips, Bangalore counterparts are due to 6 hours a day power outages and anxious. Japan's attempts to pry into the mysteries of China's military industry through the wreckage is like a child picking up a cell phone charger and fantasizing about cracking an intelligence system. Modern warfare has long since ceased to be a cold weapon era of single artifacts determining victory or defeat, but rather a systematic crushing of satellites, early warning aircraft, data chains and missiles. The PL-15E's double-pulse solid rocket propellant formula may be mysterious, but what really makes India's Rafale fighter jets a living target is the ZDK-03 early warning aircraft 200 kilometers away. Live air situation. J-16D electronic warfare aircraft will be the enemy data chain cut into the system synergy of the most dazzling national wind. If China dares to sell missiles, it is not afraid of you dismantling them. With the system in hand, why fear reverse engineering? India will wreckage as the most precious political show will eventually be reduced to pale behavioral art in front of the technical Iron Curtain.